Hello out of this binary. First, I want to let you know that I'm a little bit sick, a little bit under the weather, a little bit kind of trying to sort of recover from a pretty bad cold. So that's what's up. So I'm not really as enthusiastic or as prepared today, but I definitely have some things to say on this topic. But first, I want to mention that as sort of a follow-up to my last video, that yes, the FCC did vote to repeal net neutrality in a 3-2 vote. However, there is a bill being proposed by Congress called HR 4585 that will protect net neutrality on a legislative level. I will leave more information in the description, so please contact your representatives and urge them to co-sponsor HR 4585. Now on to the actual topic. So, dysphoria. Gender dysphoria. I have that. I have experience with that, and I have some good coping mechanisms, some not so good, so I'm just going to mention what kinds of dysphoria, what types of dysphoria that I experience, what I will be doing in the future to alleviate some of that dysphoria, and I guess what I do currently to make dysphoria less painful, I guess. So as long as I can remember, I have been extremely uncomfortable with the name that I was assigned at birth. Ever since I was a little kid, I was super uncomfortable with it. It just didn't feel like it was my name. It just felt so wrong. And, I was told, I'd tell my mom this, right, as a kid, that I was, so uncomfortable with my name, and I really wanted, a different name, and I didn't know why. I just, it just didn't fit. And she told me, oh, I didn't like my name when I was a kid, so, you'll grow out of it, and you'll get used to it, and you'll own it eventually. So I just kind of went with that answer, because I thought that I was just being immature, but turns out that I'm trans. So that was kind of the first, one of the earliest signs of dysphoria that I had, really. And before I talk about other forms of dysphoria, I want to mention this awesome analogy for being trans, growing up with gender dysphoria and not knowing what it is. And I believe this analogy was originally explained by this one YouTuber. His name is Aaron something, and he's on the trans podcast called You're So Brave, and he explained growing up trans as having a nail in your foot, and you're walking around, you're born with it, and for your entire life you're walking around with this nail in your foot, and you don't know it's there, you don't know what it is, you don't know why you have this pain, and you eventually just assume that this is normal, and that everybody has a nail in their foot, and that it's just part of life. That's just how it is, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. But then you find out that it's not normal to have a nail in your foot, and it is possible to take it out. And that pain is acknowledged, this is painful, you have a nail in your foot, and that's awful. And there is a way to get rid of that nail. And then once you are aware of it, then you notice the pain more, you know what the source is, and it gets more and more irritating as you're more hyper aware of it, and so it's therefore more present, and the pain is therefore harder and harder to bear. And as you get closer and closer to getting that nail taken out, the pain from it just hurts more and more because just you want so badly to get rid of it, even though you've had it your entire life. So, sorry about all this coughing, but that's basically my experience with dysphoria, is that I wasn't really aware of it as a kid on most levels. Like, I was aware that I didn't like my name, but that was, I thought that was just like an isolated thing. Like, I didn't recognize my own dysphoria because I just thought that all the discomfort I had around like my gender and my body and everything, I thought that that was just normal and just something that I'd get used to because maybe I just wasn't like used to my body or used to my gender, I guess, or something like that. And I thought I thought that that was just normal and that that was something that I would get used to. Then when I learned what trans was, of course, this light bulb went off in my head, like, oh, that's the problem. Like, I found it. That's what's wrong with me. Like, that's it. Like, all my life, I thought that I was just, like, a weenie for being so uncomfortable with the role I was in, my gender, and my body, of course. Like, I found out what trans was in middle school, right? And I was still going through puberty. And all this, my top dysphoria and everything, I thought that that was because I was going through puberty and that this was all new and that there were all these new changes to my body, and I thought that, that would just take getting used to this new body, I guess. But then once I learned what it was, my top dysphoria became more apparent, and I realized it more, and then each passing day, I wanted more and more to get a binder, and then when I couldn't access that, it got more and more frustrating. It was like having a nail in my foot, finding out that it's there, and wanting to get it out, and not being able to access the means to remove that nail, which made it more irritating and more painful. So, I found out about being trans, and then I was like, oh, that's why I'm so uncomfortable with my chest. That's why it feels alien. It feels like it's not part of my body. Like, it's just not supposed to be there. Like, I just have these 2 large tumors on my chest, and I can't get rid of them because, I don't know, apparently they're just supposed to be there. Like, they're not malignant, they're not harmful, but they feel so wrong. Like, I cannot, here's the thing. Ever since I finally got a binder, and I'll explain how I got it in a minute, but once I got a binder, it became harder and harder to leave the house without it, because knowing the difference between what it feels like to appear as if I have a flat chest and to have my dysphoria, my source of dysphoria, very obvious and very out in the open, because I have a very large chest. And so that kind of makes the dysphoria a little bit worse, is because it's very obvious if I'm not binding. It's super obvious. And so when I am binding, even though it doesn't flatten my chest completely, like I'm sure most people who have larger than a C cup can relate, that binders, they don't 100% flatten your chest. That's just not possible once, you're above a certain size. That's just kind of how it is. Like, if it does bind your chest, like, 100% completely, then it's probably not a safe means of binding. And that's just kind of, that's hard. It fucking sucks, but it's just a thing that I live with, and many other trans people live with, and it sucks. Where was I going from there? I'm not really sure what else I was gonna say, but I guess now I'll mention how I got my hands on a binder. See, okay, so I found out what trans was late in 7th grade. And I came out to my friends as a trans guy because I didn't know what non-binary was. When I saw the term and saw that it was a thing, I ignored it because I didn't, it just seemed too different and too ridiculous, and like no one would take me seriously if I was non-binary. Like I was scared of identifying as non-binary because because there was no representation, absolutely zero. And so, you know, it would be so embarrassing to be so different and so ostracized from society. So I ignored it for as long as I could and just identified as a guy, even though that didn't feel quite right either. It was better than identifying with the gender I was assigned at birth. So that's kind of another topic, though. What I'm trying to say is that middle school I found out I was trans, but I didn't get my hands on my own binder until my sophomore year of high school. And I had a friend who's also trans who, and so we both had top dysphoria. We kind of bond over that, right? And so I talked to them. It was around Christmas, and I said, you know, because my mom was really concerned. She didn't think that chest binding was safe at all. And it's not that she was super transphobic. That wasn't really her reasoning for not letting me get a binder. It was because of her medical concerns, especially because I have asthma, which, you know, if it's something that could possibly constrict my breathing, like binding, like she would not allow it. And so I understand where she's coming from, and I understand her concerns, and her concerns are real and are valid, and it is not 100% safe to bind, even if you don't have asthma, because it can cause permanent, even when you bind correctly, it can cause damage to your muscles in that area that support your lungs and help you breathe. So that is a valid concern, and it is very real. And that is why generally you shouldn't bind long term over the course of the rest of your life. Like, that's not really a medically safe thing to do, right? Binding is sort of meant to be a temporary solution until you're able to get top surgery. I'm not saying that if you bind that you absolutely need to get top surgery if you don't want it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that binding over a long period of time can cause actual, like, damage to your body, even when you're doing it correctly, even when you're only binding for the max of 8 hours a day or so, and, you know, following all the instructions and all the safety guidelines, you can still cause damage long term. That's what I'm trying to say. So my mom's concerns were valid. However, my dysphoria has been so bad, like, I need, like, it's something that I actually really need to feel somewhat comfortable in public and not feel disgusting every time I leave the house. Like, my dysphoria is that bad, and I'm, like, hyper aware of it. If I leave my house without binding, that's all that occupies my mind. I can't focus in school. I can't really have fun. I can't really do anything. I can't take my mind off of it. Like, it's just, it's there, and it's, like, glaring, and it's, like, I can't ignore it. I can't ignore my dysphoria. And I have dysphoria at home, too, but it's, like, amplified when I'm around people. So, therefore, I needed a binder. And so I talked to my friend, and they agreed to get me a binder as a Christmas present, and they actually didn't get it until February, but, you know, it was still basically a Christmas present, right? And so they bought and ordered, God bless, I'm still really, really thankful. They got me a $40 binder from Underworks, and they got it to me by when I came over to their house, and they gave it to me. And so I was, I guess, sort of self-binding for about a month, and then my mom did eventually find out that I had a binder. Binding behind your parents' back is risky, especially when you, like, see them every day, and, like, they might, and especially if it's, like, a big difference, they might notice, and they might, like, sneak up on you and catch you, like my mom did. She was very rude about it, and she was very, very upset. So, especially if your parents are abusive and you're binding behind their back, be very careful. I mean, I wouldn't recommend that, honestly. It's not, I guess it's not easy to do, especially, like, if you have a large chest and a decent binder. It's difficult to hide that difference from your parents. So, but that's what I did. And eventually, you know, my mom didn't make me throw out the binder or anything. She let me keep it. I guess she realized how badly I needed it. And so, even though she was still very concerned, I still kept the binder. And then I did eventually recently get a new one from GC2B, which is arguably, I'd say it's arguably a better brand than Underworks. If you would ask me what binders I would recommend, I would definitely recommend GC2B. Oh geez, this video is really long. I'm so sorry. I usually don't ramble on for this long, but anyway, I've been binding for 2 years, and you know, I've been binding for 2 years, and I guess by now I should just quickly mention what I'll be doing in the future to alleviate my dysphoria long term. I'm still 17. I'll be turning 18 in June. So when I do turn 18, I will, first of all, be legally changing my name, and I will also be changing my last name for separate reasons. So I'll be changing my first and last name. And where I live, it costs about $400 to change your name. I think it varies from, like, state to state and countries and all that. But here it costs about $400. And so that's sort of my first order of business as far as transitioning goes. And also, when I turn 18, I will be booking my first consultation with a surgeon that performs top surgery. I'd argue one of the most reputable. His name is Dr. Scott Mosser. I'll leave a link to his website in the description. He does top surgery in San Francisco, which is about 5 hours by car from here, so that is the closest big city, so I would naturally go there for top surgery. And Mosser is, he has really good results. The information on his website is incredible. He has incredible resources, and I've heard lots of good things, so I'll leave that in the description for sure. He is non-binary friendly, so if you're concerned about gatekeeping and whether or not you'll be allowed to get top surgery because you're non-binary, Scott Mosser is non-binary friendly. And if you live in California like me, you are very lucky. First of all, I am very lucky. I am very blessed to live in a state where it is easier to get top surgery. California has been great with passing trans-friendly legislation, so it kind of lessens the gatekeeping that we need to get through in order to transition. if you're medically transitioning. I'm just personally relaying what I'm doing. That doesn't mean that you have to transition the same way as I am. Everyone is different. Everyone has different levels of dysphoria, and it's ultimately up to you to decide whether or not you want surgery or hormones. I'm not even sure if I want hormones yet. It's completely up to you to decide for yourself. I'm just giving advice. If you do want top surgery, this is what I'm doing and how I'm going about it. So I will leave a link to Scott Mosser's website in the description, and all I will need, I think, as long as, because I have, it depends on your insurance, basically. So with the insurance I have, all I will need is to fit the DSM criteria for gender dysphoria, get a note from a therapist, and a referral from a primary care provider. That is your medical doctor. That last one might be hard for me because I currently don't have one, and I'm trying to find a new primary care provider. I'm trying to find an adult doctor because I'm moving from pediatrics to an adult doctor. So that's kind of up in the air for me personally, but as far as I know, that is all that I will need, that and the finances for transport, because San Francisco is very far away and driving there is not cheap. So transportation is definitely going to be a large expense for me, and I'll probably need to stay in a hotel. Hotels in the Bay Area are really expensive. The Bay Area itself is very expensive, so that's a little troubling, but I'll end this video here because I've been rambling and saying the same things over and over, so I might trim this video down, I might not, but I will definitely leave resources in the description. Again, contact your representatives and urge them to co-sponsor the bill HR 4585 to save net neutrality. And if you live in California, or even if you don't live in California and you're curious about the surgeon I've been discussing in this video, I will leave the link to Scott Mosser's website in the description. And I guess that's it. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.